Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at EX07, and EX7 offers us lots of new and powerful tools in order to build and iterate on some new and existing decks. And today's deck I'm going to be taking a look at is going to be of one of the new archetypes that also did get a nice starter deck to further enhance what it's capable of, and that's going to be of waltzing puppets, or yellow puppets, or just an upgraded version of Fable Waltz, whatever you prefer calling it by. But if you do want more information as far as what the starter deck is and my overall thoughts and opinions and a good starting place, I do have a separate video covering that information, so you might want to check that out before continuing with this, because this is going to be a little bit more of an in-depth guide at the deck. So with that being said, Puppets, for the most part, is an aggro deck. It's unlike a lot of yellow decks where it's not necessarily trying to focus on security. It's more focused on trying to swarm the field and flood it with tokens and other puppet Digimon to try to make full use of the overclock mechanic to increase the offensive capabilities of what yellow is actually capable of. And it also has some on-delete effects that it's trying to use to support the fact that overclock is going to want to delete your Digimon, and you'll have alternative ways to be able to keep your Digimon around. Then the biggest weakness of the deck is in the game plan in of itself. Because it's so focused on being aggressive, it doesn't really leave a whole lot of room for defense, and if the opponent knows this, then they could try to take advantage of what your strengths are and actually start turning them into weaknesses, because they're going to be playing some counter tech to what naturally harms more aggressive style of decks, like Ace Digimon and cards that stop or de-incentivize Digimon being played by card effects. But that's not saying that just because there are cards that exist and playstyles that exist, this deck might not be able to do well against, doesn't mean that it isn't a strong or fun deck to play around with. So with all that said and done, let's just dive right into the deck profile and see what we're working with. Starting off with the Digitamas, you could kind of be flexible on your Digitamas. This deck isn't super Digitama reliant and trying to utilize them for any particular purpose, which is why I'm using 4 copies of the starter deck Kiaramon as just one of the better draw engines for this deck, so we could try to make sure we could find all of our parts and pieces. But if you want to try to support the fact that your Digimon sometimes aren't necessarily the strongest, then the EX7 Kiaramon debuffing the opponent's security isn't too shabby of an ability either. Then when it comes to the level 3s, I'm mostly going to be sticking in archetype for what this deck is trying to do, just because if you have lots of good powerful tools, that is going to increase the deck's consistency because you're staying in archetype or in engine. So I'm going to be running mostly Shumons as a result. So that's going to equate to 4 copies of the starter deck Shumon as the deck's dedicated digging or searching tool, with some nice capabilities to debuff the opponent's security so it's easier for your Digimon to live attacking into the opponent's security. And then I'm also going to be running 4 copies of the EX7 Shumon, just because it has a nice ability native to it to reduce its Digivolution cost, digivolving into a puppet traded Digimon, which is really nice to make sure that our deck is tempo efficient, while also having the same inheritable ability, so we have the consistency on seeing that. Then I'm also going to be running 2 copies of the Promo Shumon. So the Promo Shumon is really good for its on-play ability to give one of the opponent's Digimon security attack -1, so that way they can't deal as much damage, so you could potentially try to use this type of effect to win the arms race against each other's securities, while it also having a really good inheritable ability of just giving one of the opponent's Digimon -2k for some extra added control. Then the last rookie could really kind of just be whatever you feel like you want it to be. It doesn't necessarily matter as long as it's a puppet traded Digimon, so that way it works with all of our puppet synergies. I'm just going to be electing to use 4 copies of the starter deck Junkmon just because it's some more added protection to be able to keep our Digimon around even better. His native ability states that it has decoy for puppets, so if they're trying to while also having the inheritability of barrier, so it's just an added resource for this effect to give us extra protections. And then when it comes to the level 4s, I'm still going to be keeping it in Archetype and just running an all Shushumon lineup. So I'm going to run 3 copies of the EX07 Shushumon because it's going to be our main tamer setter. And the cool thing about this is the fact that if we already have a tamer, then it's still potentially able to play out our tamer, which is really nice at being able to utilize this type of ability multiple times. Then I'm also going to be running 4 copies of the Shushumon from the starter deck, because this, in my opinion, is just the best level 4, because its security ability allows us to play a Liberator traded card with a play cost of 4 or less from our hand or trash for free, which is really good because we do have lots of abilities that we want to use with our on plays off of our level 3s and some of our level 4s, on top of the fact that we could use this to help set up our tamer as well. Then this card also comes with the Overclock ability for puppet traded Digimon, so that's allowing us to be aggressive with this style of card as well. Then the last champion of the deck is going to be 2 copies of the promo Shushumon. So this is arguably the worst of the Shushumons. So what this card is doing is it has a nice when digivolving ability, where until the end of the opponent's turn, one of their Digimon can't attack a Digimon and gain security attack -1, trying to, again, prevent the opponent from actually being able to deal damage. And now that it also stops them from attacking into your Digimon, it just makes your Digimon that much more safe when you're trying to be aggressive with them. Then it also has a nice secondary ability where during your turn, while you have Arisa on the field, then this Digimon gains jamming. So even if we don't have a whole bunch of Digimon that's debuffing the opponent's security out, we could still be aggressive in the early stages of the game utilizing this type of ability. Then it also has that same inheritable ability as the promo for just more added DP reduction to potentially remove the opponent's threats. Then when it comes to the level 5s, I'm just going to be running an all Shipperomon lineup. So the 3 copies of the starter deck at 19 Shipperomon is the worst of the 2 level 5s, but it's still really good in of itself, acting as more of a control backbone for what the deck is trying to do, because it has a nice on-play and when digivolving ability, giving us a decent amount of flexibility on how we could utilize this card to have one of the opponent's Digimon get -3000 DP. Then, if there are 3 or more Digimon in play, it gets an additional -3000 DP, so that way it could be a potential -6000 debuff. So if we combine that with some of our other DP reductions, we could at least try to deal with some pretty sizable bodies. Then its inheritable ability is a really strong effect where during all turns once per turn, when this Digimon would leave the battle area other than by your effects, by deleting one of our tokens or puppet traded Digimon, it doesn't leave, so that way we have additional ways to be able to protect our main Digimon to keep it around. You want to have as much token generation or being able to get out your puppet traded Digimon as much as possible. And that's kind of why I'm going to be running 4 copies of the EX07 Shipperomon. So it has that same inheritable ability, so that way we always have this effect online when we're going into our higher stage Digimon. And this card also natively has the Overclock ability for puppet traded Digimon, allowing this to also be aggressive in certain situations, while also having the nice when digivolving ability to actually support its inheritable ability to play out a level 3 Digimon with puppet in its traits from our hand for free. And this allows us to utilize our level 3s on plays that much more effectively. Then when it comes to the level 6s, this is where you could kind of customize things a little bit depending on what you want to prioritize, but I think that the main level 6 for this deck wants to be 4 copies of the EX07 Syndrilmon. So this card also has the Overclock ability for puppet traded Digimon, allowing us to make attacks even if the memory passes over onto the opponent's turn at the cost of sacrificing a token or a puppet traded Digimon. Then what's making this the best level 6 for the deck is the fact that at the start of our main phase and when we digivolve into this card, we get to play out a familiar token that's a yellow Digimon with 3000 DP and has an on delete ability ability to give one of the opponent's Digimon minus 3000 DP. So the fact that it's able to constantly, every single turn it's out, spawn a familiar token makes it really, really strong while being able to come with one when you go up into this card. Then it also has a nice when attacking ability where one of the opponent's Digimon gets minus 6000 DP for the turn, so it's just also being able to apply a really sizable debuff onto the opponent's Digimon that we combine with some of our other debuffs to potentially remove larger bodies. Then I'm also going to be running one copy of the starter deck Syndromon, so this is still a pretty decent card just because of everything that's going on with the deck, being able to support the Overclock ability and Puppets and Liberator traded cards, so it's not bad. It's just compared to the EX07 one, it's just not that great either. So it does have that same Overclock Puppet traded Digimon effect, while also coming with the blocker ability native to it, and it even has that nice when digivolving ability, this time to play out 2 familiar tokens instead of just 1. So the only real difference on why I'm not super huge on this is the fact that blocker isn't exactly the greatest thing. Sure, it combines nicely with Overclock to be able to have good offense and defense, but at 11,000 DP, it's not even the greatest wall to fight through, and the fact that it doesn't have the ability to constantly spawn out tokens means that its longevity is limited compared to the EX07, which is just more powerful of a card to use overall. And then the last level 6 of the deck is going to be one copy of Cherubimon Ace from EX6. So the deck doesn't natively have any Ace cards in it, and for what the deck is doing, Cherubimon Ace is actually a really strong card, not only because it gives you some interaction and defense for the opponent's turn if they're trying to be aggressive, but it's actually playing nicely with how this deck wants to work because it has the Alliance ability to try to take advantage of all of the Digimon and tokens you're going to be spawning to give it some extra boost in terms of stats and DP, and an extra security attack plus to deal more damage. Then it also has a nice on-play and when digivolving ability for, when you actually utilize this card to be able to play out a green or yellow level 4 or lower Digimon from your hand for free. So it just is coming with an extra body that we then can utilize for various different things depending on the situation that we're in. And until the end of the opponent's turn, one of their Digimon gets minus 4000 DP for each of our other Digimon. So at worst, it's going to be just minus 4000 because ideally it's going to be playing a Digimon itself. And if we have more Digimon on our fields, then this debuff becomes even stronger. And the best part is it's that premium level debuff where it is sticking on the opponent's Digimon until the end of their turn. Then when it comes to level 7s, you don't really have to run a level 7, but the two I would recommend using is going to be either Shine Greymon Ruin Mode, because this card is just absolutely that disgustingly good, or Shine Greymon Burst Mode Ace, because we're going to be sitting in our level 6 Digimon quite a lot, and they have some really good protection to them with our level 5 inheritables, so it's not necessarily unreasonable to have a little bit more extra defense, while also playing around with the fact that our deck is yellow and our tamers are yellow, and we're just going to have lots of good things going on with it, because its on-play and when digivolving ability allows us to play a tamer from our hand for free, which is nice because we do have a lot of different tamers that we want to run and use, and then the opponent's Digimon gets minus 5000 DP for each tamer we have in play, so the more tamers we have, which is what we want anyway, the more of a DP reduction we're going to be giving the opponent to remove high-level threats. Then it even has a nice when attacking ability to still be somewhat aggressive, where we get to suspend up to 2 of our yellow tamers, and for each one that we did, this Digimon gains a security attack +1 for the turn, so he himself can still try to help us close out games in a pinch. Which leads us into our tamers. So when it comes to our tamers, I'm just going to be running all Orisas because they're just really good cards to use, each one having a very specific and particular role for the deck. The main tamer, I feel like, is going to be the 3 copies of the starter deck 19 Orisa. So this is going to be the memory setting tamer for the deck, making sure that we're always going to be on at least 3 memory at the start of our turn, which we could combo off with other abilities to potentially have more memory in combination with it. Then her ability, what's making it so good is the fact that she's just increasing the overall aggressive capabilities of the deck, because when an effect plays a token or our puppet traded Digimons, we get to suspend this tamer to have that Digimon gain rush, so that way that Digimon can attack in of itself, increasing what the overall aggressive capabilities are, especially with a whole bunch of other different abilities to try to increase that Digimon's overall survival rate, or just attack rate in general. Then I'm also going to be supporting it with 3 copies of the EX07 Orisa. So this is allowing us to gain an additional memory at the start of our main phase if the opponent just has a Digimon. So you combine that with the memory setter, so that way we could have a lot of memory to be able to play around with to make our plays that much more efficient. Then her secondary ability triggers during all turns, where when you have a token or puppet traded Digimon be deleted, we get to suspend this tamer, and we get to play out a level 3 Digimon with puppet in its trait from our hand for free, so that way we basically are replacing whatever we're kind of losing and making sure that we can maintain a relatively sizable board at any stage of the game. And then the last tamer is going to be arguably the worst one, but it still comes in handy from time to time, which is going to be 1 copy of the promo Orisa. So this allows us to play out a Shumon from our hand for free when we play this card, which is really good because we do have lots of good Shumons that we can actually utilize. But the fact that it's just helping play out a Digimon on a tamer is still really good, while also being a nice tempo tool, because during your turn, once per turn, when one of your Digimon digivolves into a puppet traded Digimon, we could suspend this to gain a memory, so that way we could try to speed through our evolutions into our higher stages to be that much more aggressive. Then when it comes to the options, you could kind of customize the options based on what you feel like you want to try to prioritize. It's just for a lot of decks, especially stack-based decks, I still want to run training cards or memory boosts just to increase their overall consistency and potential speed when we're trying to digivolve up into our higher stages. And the last 2 options could kind of just be whatever you feel like you want it to be. If you want it to be either more trainings or memory boosts, that's fine. I just want to have the ability to potentially do some slightly other things. So I'm going to be running 1 copy of Wonder Stomp as a really good card to not only just draw us an extra card so we can see more of our cards, but also allow us to play a level 3 puppet traded Digimon from our hand for free, with the security ability activating that main effect. Then that's also similar to why I want to run the 1 copy of Noble Family Arts, is because, well, they're both Liberator traded options, so they're potentially searchable. Noble Family Arts is acting as the removal option for the deck, allowing one of the opponent's Digimon to get minus 6,000 DP, and if there are 3 or more Digimon on the field, then it gets an additional minus 6,000, so for a low cost of 5, it could potentially minus 12k onto something, on top of any other debuffs that we could give the opponent's Digimon. And for the most part, that's kind of it for the deck. I do really like the direction in which this deck is headed, and the deck, it does have more things that you could do with it just because of all of the puppet synergy and just token flooding synergy that it's playing with already. So we do have other cards that we could find useful and other directions that we could take the deck, like you could utilize other puppets from other colors, you could utilize other cards that are playing out tokens, and you could just try to focus on what the deck's native strengths are between the Liberator synergies and the puppet synergies as well, to further enhance what the deck is capable of. And as far as some future potential support and upgrades, we don't really know of the deck actually getting any direct support for a while, so we're going to be relying on just some indirect support, which is just anything that's able to play around with the themes and archetypes that this deck is already utilizing. But for the most part, that's just my interpretation of the deck, and feel free to tell me your thoughts about the deck down in the comments below. And while you're at it, you might as well leave a like and subscribe if you found this video to be helpful and informative. And with that, I hope to see you all in the next video.